ain't that the truth? It's all fun and games till your check engine light comes on too, and that's exactly what's going on with this Chevrolet S10 here. It's a 2002 model. It's got the 4.3 liter. It's got a code P0138 stored in it for a high bank 1 sensor 2 02 sensor. So we're gonna check it out and see what it's gonna take to fix it. Well, I think the first part of any check engine light diagnosis is usually going through and just taking a peek at the freeze frame. Now this typically isn't much here, and on this one there is not much here. I'll show you guys. I wish I had the Auto. I got some sad news about the Auto. The Auto is on its way back to New York City. It broke. It lasted, I don't know, a couple weeks. I think I've used it, and it just gave up the ghost. So they're all junk. $10,000 junk, $2,000 junk. It's just, they fix it, and they fix it for free, which is good. You know, at least I can say for Snap-on, you know. Basically I had the software went corrupt on it, the actual scan software, and they cannot, you know, reflash it via the internet. The Autel is kind of neat because if you have an issue with it, you know, you call up tech support, the guy gets in and, you know, he's bouncing all around your screen and checking things, and that's what he determined. So the only way to fix that is to send it in, so you can ship it down there. They ship it back. Takes, you know, less than a week, and like I said, there's absolutely no charge. So that's good. It's good and bad all at the same time. The only reason I mention that is because the Auto, when you look at freeze frame data on that, will have 10 times as much as this. It'll have the full data PID of everything, and that's usually pretty wonderful. But in this case, we've got just engine coolant temp, long-term, short-term, throttle position. That's about it. Not much useful information here. All right, so next thing we can do is we'll get some data set up here, and we'll fire the truck up and have a look at, you know, like our oxygen sensors and fuel trims and stuff like that. Kind of see what this O2 sensor is doing, see if we can make an assessment of what we're going to have to do to get it fixed. So after going on a test drive with this thing, it's kind of obvious to me that O2 sensor problem is probably at least this guy's worries. This thing is a toilet. Brakes are grinding and everything else. All right, let's fire it up and have a look at this. So this is the one we're supposedly having trouble with. It's bank 1 sensor 2. That's one giving us grief here. Trying to get out of a glare for you guys, but all right, looks like we just went into closed loop. At our upstream O2s, they appear to be working. Downstream there really hasn't responded even yet. Of course, let's give it a second here to I don't know if it's stuck in a high voltage, but I know it doesn't really appear to be working at all. So what I did, I don't know if you guys can hear it. Watch the, to induce a rich condition, let's say you're, at your buddy's house and you don't have any propane or brake parts cleaner. like that would ever happen. And you want to force it rich, what you can do, okay, so this is, these are our two upstreams. In order to force the engine rich, you can just sit there and just keep pumping the throttle. Real short little stabs, and that should induce a rich condition. And you can see the upstream oxygen sensors really responded to that quite well. And then naturally, to induce a lean condition, we can just take and yank the brake booster hose, because this is a mass airflow engine, so this will respond to this very quickly. And we can see that our O2 sensors upstream anyways immediately responded to that, where the downstream is kind of still at where she was at when we started. So I would say we should just do a couple simple circuit tests on that guy. I don't know if anybody's picking up on this or not. With the data PID that we have, so we have one code. Look at this. Our long-term fuel trim is at 19 and 17. Our short term is right around 0. We don't have any codes for fuel trim. We don't have any codes for a lean condition. However, according to our scan tool, we have a lean condition. We can see that the fuel trim, let's kind of focus on this a little bit. We know our O2 sensor is toast, well, or unplugged or something. We got our long term. Let's get our short term just up here at the top. We got our short term, our long term. Let's get rid of some of this other crap. Long term, short term, closed loop. I'm going to give it some throttle. We can see it improved. Let's see, what did it improve? 3%. So we're at 17. We'll say average. Corrected 5%, went to 12 at what, 3,000 RPMs. Just checking at 2,000. Only corrected about 1 or 2% there. So at almost 3,500, what kind of correction did we have? We go down to 11%. So about a 6% correction. So that data that we collected, that is pretty typical of a vacuum leak on a mass airflow style engine. We have a fuel trim that is trying to correct for a lean condition, and it's, I would assume, almost near the threshold as where this thing would throw a light. I'm surprised that the check engine light isn't on. Typically, you'd like to see your fuel trims below 10%, long term. Anything over that, usually I'm starting to look for an issue. It's not uncommon to see them come in, 5-6%, and then the short term is obviously at or around 0, which is not uncommon. Seeing them above 10, certainly seeing them at 17, 18, 19, 15, 16, wherever these were at. That is uncommon, and that is actually making up for a lean condition. Typically, when you're testing a mass airflow system and you raise the throttle, you'll watch your fuel trims go right back to 0 as airflow across the meter will overcome the vacuum leak, and your fuel trims will straighten out closer to 0. In this case, you can see the fuel trims were at whatever they were, minus 17 average, and then when we raise the throttle, and even though we raise the throttle, or raise the RPMs, I should say, substantially, 3,000, 3,500, there wasn't a huge correction. There was some correction, but not a massive correction. What that can indicate is we probably have a pretty substantial vacuum leak. Something bigger than just like, the pinhole through the intake, or, the loose hose on the airflow meter, something of that nature. And because you just have to keep in mind that even though the RPMs are high, the manifold pressure is still quite high because we have no load. If we went back and looked at our data, which I didn't, which we probably should have, you would notice that the throttle position is at, maybe like 2%. How hard do you really have to push the throttle to make the engine, rev up? And that's something you have to be mindful of, is even though you're increasing the RPMs, you still have a substantial amount of manifold pressure. Let's say, we've got, for example, maybe, well, heck, we can test it. Let's pull up those PIDs. We can pull up the manifold pressure PIDs and see what they are. And let's say we have 18 inches of vacuum at an idle, and at 3,000 RPMs, maybe we still got 16 or so. Depending on the size of the vacuum leak and how much air can actually flow through that orifice that's leaking, we may get results like this where there's still a fuel trim correction at a high RPM because there's still high manifold or low manifold pressure, and still allowing air to rush in, and not just air but unmetered air, which gives us this lean condition. Yeah, the old snap on, she just shut down on me, so we're gonna have to wait for this to reboot. And as soon as this is done rebooting, we'll pull up the map sensor PID, and we will look at manifold pressure, and we will compare manifold pressure at an idle and at 3,000 RPMs to see if there is actually an increase or decrease, because I think it's important for us to know that just because we're raising the RPM does not mean that we're reducing the amount of vacuum in the intake. Actually, we're probably increasing it depending on how far our throttle plates are open. So we'll see if we can't get this done. So what we'll have to do is, once we get this all loaded up, it's the data that we're going to look at. We got to remember, we can't just look at manifold pressure in order to find manifold vacuum. We have to subtract our manifold pressure from our barrow PID, and that will give us our vacuum gauge reading that we would all be familiar with seeing. So we'll give this a little while here to connect and do its thing. I'll turn the camera back on. All right, here we go. So we have to go back into our data list, and we want barrow, and we should have a map. Let's see, we'll get our short terms, our long terms. Now there we go, map, inches of mercury. We're gonna need RPM. mass airflow. Let's see. Okay, so let me fire it up. Okay, so we have our map, which is reading, get it zoomed in so you guys can see. So our map is reading 10, 10.3, our barrel is 28.6. So what do we got, like 18.6, 18.3 inches of mercury. And you can see our fuel trim is, 15, 16, so nothing has changed. There's our mass airflow, 4.4 grams per second. So we're going to increase the RPMs so we can see that, and what we're going to watch, get my min-max values there. What we're going to watch is our map vacuum, like I said, we've got to subtract that from our barrel reading. So what we want to see is, with the increase in RPMs, does the manifold pressure decrease or increase? See there, it's at 2300 RPMs. What did we have? We peaked down at, I don't know what the value was. Wasn't watching. Let me do that again. Well, 7.3, so that gives us what, 21.3 inches of manifold vacuum. So with an increase in RPM, because our throttle plate is so closed, we actually created more manifold pressure, or less manifold pressure, more atmospheric pressure influence, I guess, more negative pressure. There we go, how's that? So therefore, that's why I think our long term doesn't really increase. That's why we don't see a dramatic difference with our long term fuel trim. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So let me raise it up to 3,000 RPMs or more. We'll go up high. A pit I think we need up here, another pit that's valuable, is throttle position, so we can see how little we're actually opening the throttle. So there's our throttle position. Our map's over here now. Let's see what our difference is. So we can see there, again, at what, 10%, we're at 10%. Yeah, 10, 11, somewhere's in there. We're still at 21 inches of manifold pressure. So that helps kind of reinforce that theory. Can't find a vacuum leak without brake clean. Here it is. Gonna bring up our screensaver. Got our long-term and our short-term trim pulled up there. I believe we're definitely dealing with a vacuum leak. We're gonna take and spray it down. A lot of people disagree with it. They use propane, stuff like that. Either way, water, propane. I'm a brake cleaner fan. A couple of you know that. So I'm just going to kind of spritz in some of the common areas. I don't believe we're probably dealing with a intake manifold leak, because the vehicle is at 200 and some odd degrees, and typically the intake leaks will seal up and they'll only leak when they're very cold. Our long-term has changed slightly. We're at 13 and 15, so whatever leak we had is sealing slightly or changed minutely from what we had initially, but we'll do a little spraying and see if anything changes. Safety third, in case this baby lights up. Short-term trim. Nothing yet. Still just kind of hovering right around 0. I know you got it glare. Any change there at all, at least on the intake manifold. Got a couple other options. We still got our brake booster, we've got our PCV, we've got another vacuum line, we've got the fuel, whatever it's called, fuel vapor line. I would assume that would induce a ridge condition. When we grab a pair of pliers, we'll pinch off some of these rubber hoses that we can and see what kind of change we get there, if any. Alright. The one that runs to the evaporative emissions is hard plastic. So I'm pinching off the brake booster hose. Got no change. Let's see. Oh, there's a big leak. That's our PCV, so I'm just going to plug that off with my finger. What kind of change we get there. Hotter than fancy. Everything kind of steady back out here. Oh, you know what? I got that big open hole of Velcro. We can't have that. Alright, big Joey. Put this in one finger and put the other one in the other finger. Gotta let things kind of calm back down now. Because the mass airflow draws air through the crankcase, you know, like if you have your oil dipstick out or your oil cap off, that's going to throw out your fuel trims too. You can see our fuel trims pretty much settling back to where they were. A slight increase in the long term. Of course, we're looking for you know, a negative change. Got to let things kind of get back to where they were. So we don't want the ridge condition to be induced or the, you know, pure to make up for a mean condition anymore. We're looking for our numbers to drop to the negatives, particularly short term, giving our total fuel trim a little closer to 0. Let's see, we've got another hose here. And now we're getting some change. All right, well, we just found the problem. Let me unpitch this hose. you hear a slight change in the way the engine runs. Let's zoom in on this scan data. So the hose I just pinched is this hose right here. Runs over, goes to this T, has a check valve on it. That T goes to the inner fender, probably to a vacuum reservoir, and then has a line that comes out that goes to the HVAC unit, because this has vacuum controlled heater functions, you know, your blend doors and stuff of that nature. This stuff, your vent, all of this stuff runs on vacuum on this vehicle. Probably not electronic actuators. So we may have one of those leaking, perhaps, or just a crappy line. But what I'm going to do is, when I zoom in on the scan data, because we can see that it is all steadied out, our long term is 12, short term is, you know, at or around 0. I'm going to pinch this hose off and have you guys watch the difference. All right, here we go. The long term is at top, short term is on the bottom. I'm pinching the hose, and we should see a change again. And you can see our short term is immediately starting to fall. All right, so this is cutting back fuel. And what we should expect to see is we should see a long-term change. We're going to watch our long-term get at or near 0. And right now we can 100% verify this is a fix, because our total fuel trim on this bank, see, this is both bank 1, is what's our total trim here? Right now it's about, what, 7? On this bank it's about 5. Right there it's about 5. Totally livable. Let me increase the throttle. See, our long term is still kind of high right there. We'd have to hold the throttle there steady for a while, I assume, for it to adjust. Take my clamp back off that vacuum leak. We can see our short term starting to rise again. Pretty cool. Now we just got to find the leak. I can actually hear it now. Once you get down here, I don't know if you guys can hear that hissing. So what we need to do is pinch this side off. Hose is about to toast. I don't see any change in our fuel trim. Very, very little. Now we need to pinch this side off. And that fixed our leak right there. So that tells us our leak is on, you know, on this hose particularly. Yeah, you guys can probably hear that now. I'll be darned. Let's chase this down. Ha! There's your problem. Vacuum hole's not even hooked to anything. It's just over here in La La Land. Oh, what a thunder. You can't see a thing. Somebody put this ABS valve right smack in the way. Well, that's kind of silly. So we need to we need to change this little vacuum line for sure. This big one's toast. This stuff's just all just crumbly, but that's kind of funny. So there's our vacuum hose, 7/32 vacuum hose. I gotta grab a mirror and see if I can find out where the heck this thing goes. Oh, there it is.
there's a little downer down there that this thing hooks to. Oh man, they make it like impossible. I'll be jiggered. Well, we'll go upstairs and we'll grab some new vacuum hose, some 7/32 vacuum hose. Oh, I suppose we ought to test that oxygen sensor too. Isn't that what we came here for? Well, let's get this fixed first. Alright, got us a brand new piece of hose. I put this in a really convenient spot. I thought they used to have the vacuum reservoirs back in the olden days up on the hood. Now it's on the inner fender, all sleek and low profile. Boy, I think I got it. Let me, yeah, look-see. Yep. Alright, so now chop it off. Need another little short piece here. Put that right there. The smaller spaghetti type plastic line is the one that runs to the interior accessory, and then you have the check valve here. So allows vacuum to be built up in the reservoir. This T on the back side of the check valve allows the accessories to be run. When there's an absent of negative pressure in the intake manifold. So, if you're, going up the hill and giving her the beans, you can still change your mode from defrost to floor or, whatever you want to do there until your reservoir is depleted, and then you've got nothing. Cruise control is electronic on this, so there's no vacuum reservoir needed for that. Of course, we're past the days of the vacuum windshield wiper and vacuum, headlight covers. So, really, the only vacuum accessory is the stuff on the HVAC unit. Now that we've got that squared away, let's start it up and look at our data. All right, so I fired it up. Let's see. Mostly, we want to look at. So, what were we looking at here? Oh, we were looking at our manifold vacuum. I don't remember what we were running before. Right now we're running like 18.6, 18.789, yeah, 18, almost 19 inches of vacuum. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. I know the glare, sorry about the glare. So you can see our, we take our 28.6, minus our manifold pressure there. So I think we have a slight increase in manifold pressure. Obviously we had a pretty substantial vacuum leak, 7/32 inch hole over there just hissing away. No drivability problems, no check engine light, at least for this code. We can just look here, even after having this thing running only a minute or so, our long-term trim is 6, 5. That's wonderful. It's still making up for a minor correction somewheres. Not really concerned about it at this point. It's definitely way within an acceptable range. I have no qualms with that at all. I would say I'm going to rev it up a little bit. I don't expect to see a change here revving it up because it's going to take a while for that long term to relearn. still see that revved up. You know, and I don't know what it takes to relearn long-term fuel trim, you know, at a high speed like that. That's kind of interesting. Still showing that it's you know, making up for a lean condition when it's revved up. That could be as simple as a dirty mass airflow sensor. So this is getting pretty interesting. That's pretty wild, huh? The long term still showing a correction for a lean condition. Short term, or at an idle though, we've definitely made some corrections. Just have a quick look at this airflow meter. Of course, it's we've got the old squirrel catcher here in the front. Can't really see anything in there. I don't want to take the whole thing apart. You know, of course, looking at it from the clean side, everything looks good. It's my habit with these. You know, the wires, the hot wires in there. We'll just reach in with a Q-tip, very lightly come around the back side of them, kind of see what kind of crap's on them, and then do another quick test. Twice in one video. Brake cleaner / mass airflow sensor cleaner. That'll make you guys go nuts, won't it? We'll get a little sludge off that one. Got a little sludge off that one. These airflow sensor wires are very delicate. I mean, this is like a little bit like rocket surgery. You gotta be very, very careful. Gentle. It's like you're cleaning the ears on a little baby. Well, we got a little bit of sludge off this. Not too bad. I've definitely seen worse. All right. We'll take and stick that back on there. Recheck our data. So we've got her fired up here, and so I think we've definitely made some improvement. You can even see here at an idle now, clean mass airflow sensor. We corrected that little bit of a lean condition that we had. What was it, 5%? Something along those lines, I think, if I remember right. Ivan says I need to write stuff down. I never write stuff down, but I'm learning to. So now what we'll do is we'll increase our RPMs. Look at that. That was switching negative, right? Yep. So, well, I'll be darned. So, we had, put this back up, we're right side by side. We had a vacuum leak and a dirty mass airflow sensor, creating some fuel trim corrections that were almost unacceptable, and we didn't have a code for it. So we still haven't fixed this guy's check engine light. However, I think we did prevent a future problem. I think all of you will agree we've learned a little bit about vacuum leaks and intake pressure and how they affect different things here on our vehicles, and particularly our fuel trim readings.
just go back just for the heck of it and have a look at this rear O2 sensor. What we came to fix anyways. Looks like it's still broke. I don't know what NA means, but regardless, we can look at the data pin. That's stuck at 450. What we got? I don't know why it's doing this. Why is my snap-on scan tool broke? I've never said that before. Let's see, we're going to have to bring our O2's back up there. Hey, there we go. I think the fact of the matter is our oxygen sensors are oscillating. We're in stoic. Our short-term and long-term fuel trim corrections are really good now, even at high RPMs. Now remember, because we haven't reset the codes, our long-term is at 7, but our short-term is also at -7. So that gives us our total fuel trim of at or around 0. I'm going to call it a fix. Now, let's go fix our original problem, the O2 sensor. So that's quite a diagnosis. 2 problems, 1 symptom, I guess, 1 causing the same problems there in the scan tool. Granted, both the things we fixed obviously did not fix the check engine light, but they were obviously both problems, and you got to see it firsthand. But that just kind of leaves one question, and Ivan and I were discussing this the other day, watching one of Schrodinger's videos, about vacuum leaks and mass airflow, and increasing the RPM to essentially overcome a vacuum leak on a mass airflow engine, and watching your fuel trims essentially go from positive, needing a rich correction, or trying to induce a rich, trying to make the engine go rich to mask a lean condition or something like that. Anyhow, so we were talking about that, and depending on the size of the vacuum leak and the size of the orifice, and manifold pressure and atmospheric pressure, is there such a thing as having a vacuum leak big enough that when you increase the throttle that you don't see much change in your short-term fuel trim or long-term fuel trim, and can that be misdiagnosed? Can it be overlooked as a vacuum leak? And my thought was that it could, depending on the size of the vacuum leak. So this one, granted, we got the right answer. It may be from some skewed readings, and I say that because the mass airflow was, calling for, some more fuel, because that was messed up. The vacuum leak obviously was messing things up. So what I would say we can do now, being that we have a known good mass airflow, we know our fuel trims are, at or around 0 and all the different RPM ranges now, is to recreate the vacuum leak and retest that throttle test, and check it again at 2,000 RPMs, at 3,000 RPMs, to see what a vacuum leak at idle looks like on your fuel trims versus what it looks like at different RPMs on an engine with no load, and essentially, closed throttle plates in high manifold vacuum, and just see how much unmetered air can enter that orifice and how much it can skew the results. All right, so what I've done is I've recreated our vacuum leak. I took our vacuum hose that went over to the check valve and essentially just unhooked it from the check valve. Now, if you remember from back in the beginning of the video, our fuel trims weren't quite this high. So this vacuum leak, for whatever reason, on the same hose, is, it needs a tad bit more correction than it did initially. In either case, I think this will still be a valid test. So what we're going to do is we're going to increase RPMs. Let's say, let's go to 2,000 first. And we're going to look for the amount of correction it makes in our fuel trim here, to see if, raising the engine RPMs, which we all know is usually the easiest way to find a vacuum leak, watching fuel trim,
we're gonna see, you know, what kind of change we get. So here we go. So what did we do? We lost well, about 12% difference there, you know, in our fuel trim, where it cut back to, went down to what, 12? And, you know, 11. So that's pretty good. I think it's a little better results than we had before. Let's go ahead and raise it up to 3,000. Made a correction there again, you know, where it shot down 7. I see it kind of bouncing around there. It's kind of hard to watch and give it the rev up tune up, but so it definitely made corrections at short term. What was that, at 8? So it definitely made corrections. It did not, however, mask the symptom completely. You know, it didn't take our fuel trims right to 0. And I assume that's because of the size of the leak. Let's take and hook that hose back up. And a 7/32 hose, it's quite small actually. I mean, it's just your average vacuum hose. Of course, you know, it's not like a spaghetti line, but it's, you know, what you'd see. I think it's a good, great test. So we can see our total fuel trim here is good now. Total fuel trim here is good. Hose hooked back up. So we can see that our test results did change. We can see that creating the vacuum leak with a known good mass airflow, and you know, an engine that's running seems to be running at you know, stoic all the way through its RPM range, with a clean mass airflow and a good you know, no leaks. That when we create a vacuum leak through a known fixed orifice of, you know, 7/32 of an inch, our short-term fuel trim was high, or our long-term fuel trim was high, and when we you know, revved it up, it did reduce that value by more than half, but it didn't mask it completely. Now imagine if that was a, you know, a big hose, like let's say a, you know, 5/16 hose or 3/8 hose, you know, the engine would probably be running quite poorly. If I remember, like in that video that Matt did, I think that was kind of the case there. You know, your bigger vacuum leak, or of course it might have been the same size vacuum leak but a smaller displacement engine, so it would be like creating a bigger vacuum leak on this, I think. You know, the volume of air moving through it's a little different. But let's say we, you know, yank the one off the PCV valve or yank the one off the brake booster, you know, you'd rev that thing right up and it wouldn't really you know, cover up that symptom, or cover up the fuel trim wouldn't change that much. Having a hard time with my words today. So keep that in mind when you're doing the, you know, the rev up, tune up to check for a vacuum leak. The size of the vacuum leak can dictate the results that you have. Or if you have a dirty mass airflow sensor and a vacuum leak, your results can be really skewed, like we just saw. So kind of cool. 2 problems, didn't pertain to a thing to the check engine light, but it made the video fun. Let's fix the O2 sensor real quick and get this truck out of here. So we're gonna go after this O2 sensor, and here is the connector, and that tells me that somebody's already been here. So that is our catalytic converter. That's our bank 2 sensor. So it's a 3 sensor system. We've got the other one over here on the passenger side, so that will be bank 2. And I see somebody's already been after that one too. I'll come over here to bank 1. And look at that. What do you know? Somebody's already been after that one. They've just got it kind of tucked up in here. That's neither here nor there. Maybe they're trying to fix some fuel trim problems. You ever think about that? But at any rate, let's just go with the data. We're gonna take and do some really quick, simple tests. We're gonna see, number one, if the heater is working back here. I assume it is. And then we're gonna check the the sensor signal wire. We're gonna see if we can pull it down with our test light and check our sensor ground, and if everything is checks out okay, then we're gonna replace the sensor and retest our data. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna unplug our O2 and we're gonna do, because we've already got enough time invested in this thing, we need to kind of hustle along here. And what we wanna do is we're gonna do some quick circuit integrity checks. First thing, and all we need is a simple scope on a rope. You guys know I'm a big fan of the test light. The test light is probably the most undervalued tool in a shop nowadays. We'll talk about that some other day. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna check for heater operation. As we've mentioned in other videos, I think in the Honda video we just did, that some heater circuits only work with the vehicle running, in which case we're gonna hook to a ground. We'll make sure we've got a good ground on our test light. We'll just touch it on the starter or something. And when that's done, we're gonna check for power for our heater circuit. Or we can actually just jump across the two of them. You know, we use the back probe and, you know, our test light in line, start the car, turn it on, whatever. Make sure that lights up. If that's good, what we're gonna do is use our test light and again, hook to ground. We're gonna touch one of the signal wires. I don't know which one's the signal return, which one's the ground. We'll touch them, we'll watch scan data. We'll see if it takes our 450 millivolt bias voltage, pulls it to 0. If it does, that'll prove our circuit integrity is good, and you know, in which case we'll replace the O2 sensor. If the bias voltage is not pulled to ground, then we'll assume we have an open circuit, and we'll chase down that broken wire. The first thing you gotta do on a rusty vehicle is find something shiny. Look for the good oil leak, that'll get you something shiny. Okay, we verified we had a good ground. Our test light lights, as long as we don't tug on it too much. I'm gonna get the computer, I'm gonna take the camera over by the computer because my battery died, so I gotta move the camera over there. And I'll just yell out to you guys what I'm touching and what I'm testing, and then we'll look at the results. This glare is obnoxious, but basically the only one we're interested in looking at is this one here anyway, so let's just blow it up like this. So this is bank 1, sensor 2. We have it unplugged. It looks just like it did when we had it running, where we have a biased voltage of 450 millivolts or thereabouts. So the first test we'll do, right now I've got the key on. I'm gonna check real quick. Whoa, just dropped myself. For a heater circuit, I think on these GMs they need to be running. If I don't have any positive, you know, any voltage there, I'm gonna try to poke around and find the signal wire, and what we expect to see using the test light hooked to ground, we expect to pull this signal all the way down to 0. So I'm gonna go do that now. Okay, so I'm gonna look for the signal wire right now. It's gonna be one of these two wires here. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, I may not have a good ground. Let me wiggle the ground on my test light. And there you go. There's the signal wire. There you go. That's with the test light off from it. That's with the, let me get it hooked back up here. Ah, dang it. Find it right. Gotta keep wiggling my ground. And that's with the test light hooked to the signal return wire. So that tells us that our circuit from the signal return wire is perfect. So that's one known fact. So let's fire this thing up and check the heater. All right, so just to clarify, hooked to ground, I was testing one of the signal wires. You don't need a wiring diagram for this. If you look at the O2 sensor, whatever two wires are the same color, In this case, they're both black. Those are the heater wires, so it's just one of the opposite two wires. One's gonna be a ground, one's gonna be a signal return. Actually got the wiring harness is actually chafed through on this. Let's just see real quick. And I don't see any, just a little bit of chafage, nothing raw. So let's fire it up. I did not see any 12-volt signal for the heater, so we'll just fire it up real quick. We'll just use the test light as visual reference. I'll just probe into, you know, the two wires here, and we'll just check, make sure we've got a light. All right, so I just took a couple really thin back probes, went into the front side of the connector. Never do that. Just be cautious when you do. Make sure you use something that's like the correct size. Don't just make it fit. These back probes slip in there nice. Anyhow, I've got it hooked up to the power and the ground of the heater circuit. So we're gonna go ahead and start it and see if the light lights up, and that'll tell us that our heater wires are good. It won't tell us if our heater is good in the O2 sensor. We kind of don't care about that, but at any rate, start it up, Hannah. Ooh, there she goes. Nice and bright. Okay, leave it running, Hannah. Of course, I don't know which one of these is ground, which one's power. We can figure that out. But the other test we set, we have one more wire left to check. And what we can do is we can actually just take the signal wire and the what's supposed to be the signal return or the ground wire. We can just jumper these last two wires together, the two that are not the heater, and essentially watch our scan tool. The bias voltage should be pulled down to 0. And if that's the case, that proves that every wire back here is good. So let's have a look at the scan data one more time. I'm gonna take and jumper the two wires opposite the heater. I expect the bias voltage to be pulled to 0. If that's the case, it needs an oxygen sensor, and we'll just double check our data and ship this baby down the road. So here you are back at the computer. We're running at our bias voltage. I'm gonna go jumper the last two remaining wires together. We'll see what we have when that happens. Make sure you jumper the right ones. You do the wrong ones, you might make smoke. So those two are jumpered together now. And you can see it looks like it pulled us right down. Did it again, pulled it right down to 0. So that proves that all of our wiring to the O2 sensor is good, and that's a quick test you can figure out in just a matter of a minute or so, actually. All right, 1-2 barbecue. Of course. Oh, mother lover. And this is the way it always works. Stupid oxygen sensors. She's stuck right in there. So let me get a big ratchet. We'll give her the beans. I swear this happens every time I do a YouTube video. You want to do an O2 sensor, a little action? Hour later, the whole stripped out and chaos. We're about to win this war. Well, got that out of the way. Now we got to get a socket and get on there. I don't do a YouTube video. You reach up there with like a 22 mil stubby. It's like spinning out with your fingers, but turn the camera on, you can't do nothing. Get this shit. Yeah, probably have like a flex head. You don't want to strip it. You don't want to round off the only thing you got to get a hold of here. Yeah, I got need probably a flex head, I guess. And dang it. Actually, I think I need to chop more of it off. Woo, hot. What do you want me to do, chop it off? I think that's what Bruce Jenner said, isn't it? I shouldn't have said that. Oh, baby! Look at that, huh? Talking all that smack about it, and this baby, she comes right out. 02 barbecue. Got our new O2 sensor right here. Already slobbered up with the old Never Sneeze. We'll stick that right there. Okay, beautiful. Let me get a wrench. Got a wire there. 22 millimeter flare nut wrench. Makes O2 sensor work lovely. Or the other thing this wrench works good for is Subaru EGR valve pipes. A lot of you guys know I do a lot of Subaru work. I do lots of Subaru head gaskets, and this is my go-to wrench for that. Okay, O2 sensor is tight. Take and plug it back in. Oh, you sucker. That's what happens when you get a big yank. Look at it. You can't plug a plug into a plug. Well, there's some guys that try, but anyhow, well, that sucks. I just installed it. What in the thunder? Case of the old wrong parts from the Advance Auto. There, I just said it out loud. That sucks. Because what sucks is they're closed. Well, it's just a little after 5. The delivery's shut down. I don't want to drive. Oh, bummer. Wow. Grr. What if people have cell phones that never answer? Anyhow. I just want to get this done. It's such a sweet video right till this point. Now you see what I go through every day. This O2 sensor is for a 4-cylinder S10 with the big 2.2 liter. This is the correct downstream sensor for that vehicle. I just looked it up to see what went wrong here, whether it's a wrong, boxed part, or if it was, whatever. This is for a 4-banger. This baby's got the big rockin' knockin' V6. I can't get a hold of Vanessa to go get one, so. Crap biscuit. I guess I really want to fix it. I want to finish it. I'll be right back. Boom! Modern television back in a half a second. We got the right one now. Right connector. Verify your parts, you big dummy. Oh well. Not that big a deal in the big picture anyways. Just had to take a little half-hour ride down the back. So screw this one in. Alright. That's all screwed in. Look at that, it plugs in. Sweet. We're gonna be nice about the one that we play with. We're actually gonna put it back where it belongs. And put the annoying lock tab back in it that whoever worked on it last left out. So it goes up into the frame here. There's a little, at least I guess that's where it goes. There was a hole and it's got the little Christmas tree thing on it. So we put it in up there. It's definitely not gonna come down and get burned up on the exhaust. So let's fire it up and look at scan tool data. And we should see some activity out of this baby. Cross your fingers. The converter's not toast, because that's a heck of a phone call to make. You call the customer and say, hey, Mr. Customer, here's your problem. Put the O2 sensor in, and all of a sudden we're like, well, your converter's nuked. Of course, you wouldn't know that until we have a working oxygen sensor, which we should have now because we did the test. Okay, just fired it up. Go back to our data. We are just going to look at our oxygen sensors. and particularly this one right here. And we can already see that bank 2 is on the rise. Hooray. That's a verified fix. Let's get our loop status. Let's see, oh, our field trims here are still kind of compensating from playing with that vacuum leak. Oops. All right. So here's our downstream oxygen sensor. We don't want to see this one oscillating because that would be bad news bears for this guy. We'll give this converter a little bit to warm up here. Let's see, let's get RPM PID coolant so you guys kind of know where we're at. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? There she is. Here's our downstream we just changed. It's obviously working now. Maybe not in a good way, but already cut loose on this turd bucket. But at any rate, you can see where I forced it rich by pumping the throttle. We can see that downstream has responded to that. I don't know what's about ready to blow up on the front of this S10, but it's not sounding too good. Looks like our catalytic converter is warmed up. It started working, thankfully. Come undone over here. I think what we have come to fix, we've fixed. This is our original problem. Looks like our fuel trims have relearned and close to zero. That's wonderful. Fabulous. So I can create a vacuum leak here. I can show you how the downstream responds in relationship to the upstream. I think that was one test that we tried originally. We yanked the brake booster hose off. Let me go pop that off. So the brake booster hose is off. It responds immediately. Put it back on. Might take it a minute to kind of regain from that. Upstream regained immediately. That's what we'd expect, and there you go. Confirmed fix. And from the big brake booster leak, we can see our fuel trim here. You can see that starting to recover. Total trim, that's what we want to look at. Long term minus the short term. Total trim. I say we got it. And the converter appears to work. Sweet. And last but not least, we'll go look at our code. That was our original code, bank 1, sensor 2, signal high. So at some point, this thing must have stuck at a high voltage. We've confirmed to fix that. We can now clear our codes. Now that we've fixed another problem and saved this guy from coming back in the future with the fuel trim issues. There you have it, viewers. 1-2 barbecue, right? We got this baby done. We learned a couple things. We learned that Advance Auto will sell you the wrong parts occasionally. Not always, but occasionally. We learned that the Snap-on scanner likes to work occasionally. Not always, but occasionally. Along with the Autel. It's on its way back to New York. I've had terrible success with electronics this week. And I should have had a little funeral burial service for the fuel injector tester. However, I had to go buy a new one. So I've got a brand new OTC fuel injector pulser. Long story, the old one went up in smoke. Sweet case study outside anyways. Dodge Dakota. Really awesome problem, really cool. Me and I have been talking back and forth on it. May collaborate and do a video. It's got a pretty neat problem, and we're able to find that, but I won't let the cat out of the bag. How'd the cat get in the bag? I don't know. Anyhow, I always keep a bag here, just in case I find a cat. It's a good sized bag. I'm looking for a big cat. At any rate, this baby's fixed, and we got to see it. And the other thing I guess that's kind of important on this, we got to do a little bit of studying. We got to see the relationship between vacuum leaks and fuel trim, and the size of the leak versus the change in the fuel trim versus the RPM versus manifold pressure or lack thereof, negative pressure. So that's fun. That's a fun experiment. Had nothing to do with the check engine light. However, it fixed the problem, saved this guy from coming back. So pay attention to your scan data. Just because the engine light is not on doesn't mean there's not a problem. This didn't exhibit any symptoms. A little higher than normal idle, a little rougher. You know, there was some change in the idle quality and such when we kinked that white hose off. Not a ton. I'm surprised I didn't hear the vacuum leak right off, to be honest with you. But I guess in my defense, a lot of these plastic intake manifolds, they all sound like they're leaking to me. It's like you can hear the air rushing through, you know, the Venturis in there, and they always sound like they're leaking, because you'll be like, oh, is that leaking, you know? And you gotta trust your data, trust your fuel trims, trust what it's telling you. And that's it. That's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. I know we really rabbit trailed off from the oxygen sensor diagnosis, but really that's kind of small potatoes, you know. I mean, it was just a standard. It would have been like a really lame-o video, total weak sauce, but we made it cool. So thanks for watching. Check us out on Facebook if you haven't. Like us there. You can give this video a thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't, but if you do give us a thumbs down, tell us why, because there's a couple people out there that give us a thumbs down on every single video, but don't tell us why it sucks. Tell us why it sucks. If you're gonna give it a thumbs down, let us know. We'll make it better. If not, give it a thumbs up. You can find us on Google Plus too if you want to connect with us socially there. And just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.